Good morning. It is Monday, January 20th, 2025. I have a question here from the comments on YouTube. It says, "Hi, Nick. Can you please go over the most efficient way of going from junior to senior dev?" And I thought I'd talk through this, give some different perspectives. So if you want your questions answered, leave them below in the comments or look for Dev Leader on social media. Send me a message with more details. I'll keep it fully anonymous for you. Um, this is a tricky question to answer. And when I have to answer questions like this, sometimes it feels kind of bad because I'm like, I want to give helpful advice, but it ends up being very generic because when you want to cover a lot of surface area with an answer, it like kind of has to be generic. And when I was thinking about how I want to go about this, I want to like try to extract some like I don't know like meta principles in general. So for this individual, it's going to be tricky to say, okay, like here's the roadmap, and I think that's what a lot of people want is like, okay, if you are going to be starting out and you are going to be a beginner, right? And everyone starts there. Every single person that gets into this starts as a beginner, as a junior. People are looking for efficiency, right? If I can learn from other people, I can learn from their experiences. How do I go from point A as a beginner to point B, C, D, whatever, sort of as effectively as possible? Like, why should I have to waste more time if I can learn from you? And we apply this kind of thinking personally, I think, like to like everything in life, right? Like you want to lose weight, what's the fastest way that you can lose weight? You want to gain muscle, what's the fastest way that you can gain muscle? You want to learn a new language, what's the fastest way that you can do that? Like what's the most effective way? So for this kind of question, the most efficient way of going from a junior senior developer, it's like I get why people want to ask it, but I think I wanted to just kind of address that like a lot of the time we look for shortcuts and the shortcut is not really the shortcut is recognizing there isn't really a shortcut is kind of how I want to say this. If anything, I would say the shortcut is being focused on the things that you need to do, but those things that you need to do take time. So it's like it kind of feels like a crappy answer, right? So maybe we can take a step back and talk about like when we talk about a junior developer, what does a junior developer look like compared to a more senior developer? And I would say a couple things that stand out are like I expect juniors aren't fully autonomous, right? Like someone comes in to work on my teams. I expect that they need ramp up time in the language that we're programming in the tech stacks that we're using, in the domain that we're in, right? Domain's a huge one, and I wanted to pause on this for a second because when we talk about transferable skills, you'll hear me talk about it doesn't matter what programming language you know or your tech stacks, whatever, because you're going to learn different ones. You're going to apply what you know to different ones. That kind of stuff is very, very transferable. Okay, like programming languages look similar enough, and don't get me wrong, some of them I don't really like, but they look similar enough where if you spent time and you know one, you could learn another. Same with tech stacks. With domains, it's very interesting. What I mean by domain is like, what are you developing software for? Right. So I spent time working in digital forensics before Microsoft. That's a pretty specific domain, digital forensics. But even within that, there's domains for computer forensics. There's domains. I spent a lot of time in mobile forensics, like for mobile phones. There's cloud forensics. And this is all digital forensics, part of a larger forensics group. I spent time working in embedded development for essentially being able to, you know, immunize, medicate farm animals, a completely different domain. I've worked in bank machines, ATMs, building desktop software to customize ATMs, like all sorts of stuff, right? So those domains, you may be even if you're an experienced developer, a senior developer, you may feel like you are a junior in terms of the domain and getting ramped up. So I just wanted to comment on that because if depending on why the person's asking this, it's like if you're trying to talk about like being comfortable, you may get very comfortable in terms of your programming language you're using, your tech stack, but you may find between different roles, if you're working different domains, you may have this like feeling of, oh crap, this is very new. Maybe it feels kind of scary, it's uncomfortable, but like, you'll pick up on the domains as well. Transferable skills between domains become very interesting. So I just wanted to make note of that because just to give you a brief example, I worked in digital forensics, like I mentioned, and digital forensics is often about uh, sort of structuring unstructured data and then making the data tell a story, if that makes sense. Like we need to understand what was happening, a timeline, attribution for what's changing what data, that kind of thing. And like now I work in routing. So I work in the routing plane for Office 365. And you might say, okay, well, that's completely different than digital forensics. And you're right. But something that's interesting and transferable between the two is that when we're talking about routing, we can talk about the lifetime of a request. So we have a data trail. What's setting the markers that we see. You can talk about sort of how the data tells a story. So there are some, like, as you're kind of navigating your career, you can start to look for some commonalities even between domains and kind of have transferable skills that way. Um, won't always line up like that, but just something to think about. When we talk about junior to senior, okay, autonomy is one big part that I expect seniors become more and more autonomous. Autonomy does not mean working in a silo, though, and I think that's important to note. When I say autonomy, what I mean is that you don't rely on other people as much for the decision making. Again, that doesn't mean that you go off on your own, do everything on your own, never talk to anyone. Pardon me, hiccup. I don't edit these videos, right? So you get to see all the fun stuff. So it does mean that you are able to start forming your own opinions. It does mean that you are consulting your team, right? Sharing designs with them, reviewing things with them, collaborating with them. But it doesn't mean that you go to the senior person every time and say, "Hey, like I need you to help me pick which one." You instead kind of flip things around and you say, "I've done some research, I formed an opinion, I'm presenting the path forward I think, and now I would like your opinion on if you feel this is a good path forward, any holes that you can poke in this, and if there's alternatives that we should explore." But you've kind of done most of the homework, for lack of better phrasing, on the scenario. Whereas someone that's junior is kind of like, I need help understanding where I should even be looking. And there's nothing wrong with this, by the way. I'm not saying this like it's a bad thing. This is actually what I expect from juniors. Where should I be looking? Now that you've given me a couple of directions to go look, I will go try looking in those directions. And I expect that juniors probably get stuck doing that. And that's okay. So cool, you're getting stuck exploring that direction. Let's come back and talk about why you're getting stuck, right? These are like the getting stuck thing. You'll hear me talk about this a lot. I think that's one of the best ways that we learn is you get stuck and then you have to kind of get unstuck. That's the learning part. Um, I would say that I have an expectation of seniors to be mentoring more junior people. Different companies, different teams and stuff will have a different sort of amount of this, right? It's really difficult to mentor junior people if you're at a startup company and there's 3 people on the team and it's 2 senior devs and like the founder or something. Like, okay, who are you mentoring and you're classified as a senior, right? You might say it's impossible for me to mentor. There's no one on the team to do it. I get it. These are generalizations, right? But on a team that's maybe more well-rounded in terms of like junior, mid-level, senior, principal, or staff, however you'd like to call these levels, I would expect that at a senior level, you are trying to find opportunities to mentor and coach and help along the more junior people on the team. Okay, so that means again, not only are you not working in a silo, you are collaborating with other people, but you're reaching that point where you're starting to enable the more junior people on the team, helping them kind of break through some barriers. So you start to become a multiplier in that regard. Again, different teams, different companies will have different expectations around this, but I have never worked, I've been an engineering manager for 12 and a half years. I've never been in a position where we looked at seniors as not having any capacity for mentorship. I've worked in sort of different situations where we have sort of an understanding that some people have a different capacity for that, right? And in some regards, I've seen very much that people that really lean into the mentorship and stuff, they end up having a path that's maybe more towards, potentially more towards management or like a team lead kind of thing. And others where that's just not the case, but they do it not because they have to, but they do it sort of because it comes up and they're like, cool, I've done it, but like I'm not going like super out of my way to do it all the time. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially if they have other skills and stuff that are kind of bringing them up. But that is an expectation, some amount of that. And the other thing that I wanted to mention with respect to seniors is like the scope of impact in their work is greater, and that's often achieved by doing collaboration. So even within the team, so being able to lead projects and have kind of other people on the team facilitating some of the work for that. So they're delegating work out, or cross teamwork. So you're working with another partner team on some project. Perhaps you're the one leading it. Don't necessarily always have to be leading projects. It's really difficult to be leading like 10 projects, but you might be leading one and participating in one or two others or something, depending on your workload. But the type of work that you're doing is more impactful. And well, what does that mean? Well, it means that you're working on business priorities that are more important than some of the other things that are higher priority. They might have more visibility in terms of the business impact. They might have more of a monetary impact. They might be unlocking more technology, right? So sometimes the tasks that we're giving to more junior people are more confined. They're more the constraints are more well understood, right? Sometimes we'll be giving juniors tasks where like we know we know how to go do it, we just haven't done it yet. It's important, or we understand that there's a bug somewhere, a smaller feature we want to build. We have a rough idea how that might look, or some speculation, maybe what's causing the bug, but we haven't actually proven it. So okay, go take that step to prove it. Maybe you find something else and then go fix it. But it's very much more scoped. Um, and then on the impact side, I was mentioning like collaborating with others. I think like your really what starts to shine is like your technical skills will continue to grow, and that's kind of just expectation will keep happening. But what really needs attention, and I say this because I find that a lot of software engineers generally don't focus on this, what really needs attention is that your soft skills are continuing to improve. And you will quickly notice if your soft, in my opinion, I hope you would notice that your soft skills are lacking if you're trying to do leading of projects, if you're trying to collaborate across teams, and you're finding that there's a lot of friction, you're finding it difficult. Like I can't see why I'm not getting people to collaborate or get on the same page like regularly with everything you're doing. It could also be the people you're working with happen to be a particular way. Maybe their soft skills are lacking as well. But you'll start to notice like your soft skills really start to play a role, which is why a lot of the time I try to remind people early on, don't neglect these. People are so concerned with their technical skills early on because we're software engineers. I get it, but um, we end up neglecting the soft skills. Like who cares, right? Like it's communication. I can send a message, I can write an email, I can write code, I can read code, I can read emails. Like what do you mean like I need to work on communication? Right? But like the reality is like finding effective ways to communicate. I was sharing this on where did I don't know where I shared this. I made a oh I have a third YouTube channel where I do like weekly check-ins for myself. I've been doing it. This is the third year now. It's almost like a video diary that I put on YouTube. No one watches them, but that's okay. And I was saying in that I actually had a big presentation that I did earlier this week, or last week, I guess, because it's Monday now. And I failed to communicate effectively in that presentation, which sucked, right? But like it's just a reminder that like just a brief example, it's like the content and the topics that were there, I felt like were very much still on point, even given the feedback. But I feel like the way that it was presented did not articulate um, almost like a cohesive strategy that we have. So the result of that is that it looks like I don't understand what's being put together here. When I say I don't, I mean the audience that is receiving it is like, I don't understand the direction of this. So if they don't understand the direction of it, then I've failed to communicate effectively. And that's okay because now that I have the feedback, I know how to go transform it, or I believe I know how to transform it in a better way. But even at principal level, from being in the industry for over 12 and a half years and having to do stuff like this, I still have room to improve on my communication. I make YouTube videos, right? I've done over 400 YouTube videos. I've written hundreds of blog articles. I post every day on social media. I still have room for improving my communication. So as you're advancing from junior to senior, the expectation is that your soft skills are also increasing. It's not just communication. I'm just giving you one example of soft skills. So the most effective way, so it becomes kind of interesting. My recommendation when we're trying to think about the most effective way is trying to think about how to, and junior to senior is not, it's not like a quick path. And if you want the shortcut is like go to a startup where they'll slap a label and say that you're senior. It's like, what's the fastest way to be CEO? It's like, just go register a company and call yourself CEO. Woo, you did it, right? But like, is that actually what you want? I don't know. That's the quickest way. Could have made the video that fast. Say, start your own company, give yourself a title, and you're done. It only costs a few $100s to go register. So, but I don't think that's actually what people are asking for. I think they're trying to say like, number one, what are the qualities that we need to be trying to address, and number two, like, how do I go put that into practice? So, if we're kind of starting from some of those things that I was mentioning, I think working on building up your autonomy is important. That doesn't mean stop asking questions. It means asking better questions. So how you're framing your questions, like do your homework first. Then when you're going to ask for help, try to see like, okay, I've done a little bit of background work here. And now that I've done some of that research, like, can I form an opinion about this? So instead of just going to someone and saying, hi, I'm stuck, and then them saying, well, what have you tried? You can say, look, okay, I'm stuck here. I've tried these two or three things. I actually think that the third thing here is the best approach forward. Here's why I think that, but I wanted your input on this because I'm not actually sure if we see A or B as being more valuable, or maybe I don't really understand if that's going to be a longer time commitment versus this other path. Like, show that you've done some investigation and that you have formed an opinion and then you're looking for feedback on it. I think that's a really good direction to start moving in. And that takes time. I'm not telling you this like you can snap your fingers and it just happens. I'm telling you this because as you're practicing these things, because all of it will take practice, as you're practicing, you can start to say, hey, like, am I transitioning from just asking straight up questions like, hi, more senior developer, I'm stuck and don't know what to do, to, hi, I've done some homework here. Maybe I had to get clarification from you earlier, but I've done my homework now and I'm forming an opinion on this, and I would like your thoughts on my opinion given this data. Right. So that's kind of moving that in one step forward there. The um, this is a tricky one, but like your throughput of work, I guess, is a bit of a factor too. This will look very different depending on the type of work you're doing, the team structure. Like, there's so many variables, which is why I'm like, I can't just sit here and tell you you need to have 2 pull requests per day and now you're a senior. Like, doesn't work like that. But if you think about the complexity of work that we might give a junior person, we might expect that would take longer, even for something that's more simple. Whereas someone who's more senior maybe can, at the same rate, get through a couple of things that are more complex, perhaps. Right? So you want to be making sure that you're looking at your rate of delivery of work and making sure that you can be balancing that properly. You should have conversations with your manager about this for sure. Level set on the expectation there and try to be demonstrating that you're making progress, not to overload yourself with work, because I want to bring up another gotcha here, not to overload yourself with work, but making sure that you're making progress that is at you're demonstrating a rate of improvement, especially in the beginning, right? Ramping up in something, it's expected it's going to take you longer, of course. Anyone that doesn't believe that is like sort of failing to acknowledge that like someone who's new to something is going to have a ramp up period. So have a conversation with your manager about that ramp up and like where those expectations are. I think that's one of the best ways to get clarity on that, because a lot of people that I talk to have questions. Am I doing enough? Is this fast enough? Am I falling behind? Right? Like, when they come to me, if I'm managing them, it's a great conversation to have. Then I can bring clarity and say, like, hey, yeah, you've been in this space for a little while now. I expect that you know the domain a little bit better. So, yeah, maybe at this point it would be good to start seeing if you're able to maybe balance a couple of work items at the same time. Now, our team is a little bit unique in that some of the changes take some time to roll out, perhaps. So maybe they need to juggle more things. Whereas previous teams I've had, I don't want people working on things in parallel unless it's like a research task, which is almost like no coding at all, and then some code commitments. But these are things that we talk about on our team. So have conversations about your throughput, make sure that's going in the right direction. And then over time, what should start happening is that the work items that you're assigned, you start to have less of a dependence on other people to get them done if they're assigned just to you. Okay. So that will happen. And then over more time, you will start to transition to you have a dependency on other people because you are leading those things. But that's because at that point, you're working on larger projects that you need to delegate work to other people, that you need to start coordinating efforts across other people. But this could take a significant amount of time. Like this could be years. And that's not a problem. From my experience, if you're working at startup companies, this isn't every startup, but if you're working at startup companies, generally some of these things move very, very fast in comparison. And that's because teams are small. Everything about the business is trying to get things going. It's a lot of fast pace, pivoting, a lot of work coming up, a lot of direction changes. Whereas I find at larger companies, it's a little bit more steady state. So some of those projects are already sort of decided. There's a less pivoting. So if you're not in a larger company, that work might be more structured. And it's not like you're sort of accidentally getting this opportunity to go lead this project. Whereas in a startup, it might be like someone's got to work on this thing and like it doesn't matter what your title is, go do it. And you're kind of forced into these situations where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but it's got to get done. I feel like that happens a lot more at startups, at least from my experience. That's how I became a manager. So still figuring out what I'm doing. So I think those are some of my tips that I would recommend. I acknowledge that that's not like a here's a roadmap kind of thing, but maybe the final send away because I feel like I can't make a video on this stuff without saying it. But like, talk to your manager, right? If you're not, if for the person that was asking this, if you're not yet employed, I would say when you get employed and you're like, okay, I'm a junior and I want to focus on my career development, please have a conversation with your manager. The things that I shared with you in this video, I feel like are general. These are things that I think should be applicable regardless of the team and stuff that you're on. But the best way to be making progress is to be talking to the person that's going to be influencing your promotions. It's going to be your manager. Now, you may work at places where you have a crappy manager. You may work at places where you have a good manager. But ultimately, if you're staying at a company, the person that promotes you is the manager. And that doesn't mean, kiss butt and, like it's all just like, yes, yes, sir, yes, ma'am to everything. But it's about like understanding the expectations they have and working towards that. And as you get more experience, you may find that like perhaps you do have a good manager that's really supporting you in the career direction you're trying to go. In other cases, you might find that you have a manager that's not supporting you. And despite having conversations about it and trying to get more clarity, it's not happening. That might mean that it's time for a different team, different company, perhaps. Maybe the culture's not right where you're at. But these are things that will take some time to recognize. So shortest path, most efficient way. I don't really have a next 3 simple steps to being senior in 4 months. It doesn't really work like that. Unless you start your own company and give yourself a title. But those are the things I would recommend focusing on. I hope that helps. If you have other questions, please leave them in the comments. Happy to try and answer them for you. Or look for Dev Leader on social media. Send me a message, and I'm happy to try my best to give you my thoughts. Until next time, take care.